We started a lesson on Hesed last week, and we're doing part 2 today. Hesed is probably one of the most important words you'll find in Scripture, and we left it in that form, Hesed, because it is translated in any number of ways, such as loving kindness or steadfast love, covenant love or loyal, faithful love, that sort of thing, or just simply the word mercy or love or kindness. The translations that we have, the various translations, have so many different ways that they render it. It is a rich word. In fact, if you read your bulletin on the back and in the inside, you'll see that it's even spelled sometimes differently. Hesed is more closely related to the way it would be related letter for letter in Hebrew to English, but the sound has usually that CH sound to it, or sometimes you'll see it written with a KH, Hesed. That's kind of the way the Hebrews would pronounce it, Hesed. I simply go for Hesed because it looks like Hesed, and I don't want you to think I've got a speech impediment or a gum problem. But let's think for a little while about this characteristic of God. We're suggesting that we as children of God reflect or partake of God's nature, His nature. That's who He is. He is one who is Hesed, who is a steadfast lover. That is what He does, and He wants us to have that kind of nature ourselves, and to act or to do or to show Hesed in our relationships with others. So first of all, we want to look at the first major point here. Hesed is something that describes God's nature, and we're going to look at briefly here 3 verses that talk about how God is a God of steadfast love. Who is a God like you, Micah said, pardoning iniquity and passing over transgression for the remnant of His inheritance. He does not retain His anger forever because He delights in steadfast love. God delights in being a faithful, loving God, one who will not let us go, one whose love is not here today and gone tomorrow. God loves forever. And that's the kind of people He wants to shape us into. He wants us to reflect His image. Another passage from the Old Testament, Hosea chapter 2. God's chosen nation, Israel, has been unfaithful to Him. So He said, I'm going to take them out into the wilderness, and I'm going to win their love again. I'm going to bring them back into covenant love, to where they will faithfully love Me and faithfully respond to Me as their husband. I will betroth you to Me forever. I will betroth you to Me in righteousness and in justice and in steadfast love and mercy, in Hesed and in mercy. God says the basis of our relationship is love, it's mercy. And isn't that the basis of any good, lasting marital relationship? If you don't have the mercy to forgive in a marital relationship, then that relationship is not going to go very deep, and it's not going to go very long. It will skim along the surface, and it will eventually fade out or not last. But God says, my relationship with my covenant people, I'm going to betroth them to Me again. I'm going to promise covenant love. I'll never give up on them. And I'm going to win them back into covenant relationship. Beautiful story there. I will betroth you to Me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord, is how that Hosea passage ends. Then Isaiah got into the action here. Though the mountains be shaken, God says, and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love, there's our word Hesed, it's unfailing love, for you will not be shaken. Shake the world, shake the mountains, and if you see them shaking and removed, my love will remain unshaken and unmoved. nor my covenant of peace will that be removed, says the Lord, who has compassion on you. So this is the nature of God. God is a God of loving kindness, of steadfast love, and he wants us to reflect that and to be that in our own relationships with others. We're going to suggest here 4 ways that we can respond to God's loving nature and become like him ourselves. Number 1, if you're looking at your outline, we are encouraged when we remember God's faithful love. That's where we begin. We have to remember the God whom we serve, the God whom we have responded to, that is his basic nature. He is a God of steadfast love more than any other characteristic that he has. And he wants us to remember that about him so that we will become like that ourselves. We're going to deal more with Lamentations chapter 3 on Wednesday night, but just want to kind of give you an idea here. Listen to what Jeremiah says when he talks about the steadfast love of the Lord, the song that we sang based on this passage this morning. Jeremiah is standing atop the rubble of Jerusalem, and he knows that his people are facing 70 years in Babylonian captivity, and he's really discouraged. What is it that gets him out of his discouragement and encourages him? It is remembering who God is and that he is steadfast in his love. And he said, Jeremiah, you tell the people you're going to be there for 70 years. Plant your gardens, build your houses, be productive in Babylon. That's where you are, 70 years. But after that, I'll bring you out. And so Jeremiah said in his prayer, remember my affliction and my wanderings, the wormwood and the gall. My soul continually remembers it, and it is bowed down within me. You can see he's discouraged. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. What's the basis of his hope? Remembering something about the God that he serves. I remember the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And so that buoys him up. That gets him back in the game, so to speak. Now, all we have to do really to get very discouraged is read the newspaper on a regular basis, or watch the nightly news, or maybe one televised political debate will do it. You don't need a regular thing, just watching the candidates that are out there. And you say, that's the future? Well, that's part of the future. Jeremiah said, I remember God and who he is, despite my present circumstance, despite that this is going to be a long haul of something I don't like. I remember his steadfast love, and it makes a difference. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. And I don't care who your political candidate is. I don't care what the news is. I read a news item just before coming to church here about a player for the New Orleans Saints. We have folks here from Louisiana this morning who was killed last night in road rage. Someone ran into him on the road and then got out and shot him, killed him, shot his wife, but her wounds aren't life-threatening. Football player Will Smith. I don't know if you know who that is or not, but that's the world that we live in. You wake up to that and you say, why? Especially if you ran into someone, you get out and you kill that person. I could understand maybe the road rage if you got ran into. But no, here the individual was the one who did the deed. How do you keep hope in that kind of world? You keep your focus where it ought to be. That's where your hope is. That's where your trust is. That's where your future is. And he will faithfully bring us into that future because he is a God of covenant love. He will not leave us in bad circumstances. Number two, we need to pray for God to show steadfast love. Do you pray to God and ask him to show you his faithful love? To do something in your life and in the life of your family, not because of who you are or because of what you've done, but you appeal to him and to his name and to do it for his name's sake. Sometimes Moses was so discouraged with the people that God wanted to wipe them out, and he would say, Lord, would you do this not because of what we've done or how we've behaved, but because of who you are? And he would appeal to God for his name's sake. Sometimes that's where prayer needs to be. We want God to do something in our lives, not because we deserve it, not because we've done something to earn it, but because of who he is. And we say, despite who I am, despite what I've done, will you, for your name's sake, show steadfast love? And pray for God's faithful love that way. For you, O Lord, are good and forgiving, abounding in steadfast love to all who call on you. There's the prayer. When we call on him, God responds in his steadfast love. David appealed to this after a dreadful time in his life, adultery, murder, and he said, have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love, according to your Hesed. Don't have mercy on me because I deserve it, but have mercy on me because you are a steadfast lover who will not let me go. According to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions. David knew that he had no leg to stand on, that if God was going to make things right with him, it was going to be because God, for his name's sake, would continue to love him and would continue to redeem him and would continue to bring him out of his pit that he had dug for himself. Pray for God's steadfast love. Number three, God asks us to do or to show Hesed, acts of mercy, because that's who he is. He wants us to do that. Micah chapter 6, he has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, treat people justly and fairly, right? And to love mercy. Go beyond just treating them fairly and justly. Sometimes if you treat people fairly, they'll get angry because they know they deserve it, but they're still going to be angry at you because you treated them justly according to their action. He says treat them justly when that's appropriate, but go beyond justice to mercy, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Okay? That's Micah chapter 6. Then you go to Zechariah chapter 7. This is what the Lord Almighty said. Administer true justice. It's there. We need to treat people justly and fairly, but go beyond that. Show mercy and compassion to one another. Give them not just what they deserve or earn, but give them more than what they earn or deserve. Jesus said, if someone compels you to go with him 1 mile, what? Go with him 2 miles. When I was in college, I heard a sermon there in Abilene, and the title of it was, And Then Some. My mother loved that title, and she loved that sermon, because it said that Christians ought to always do what's expected of them, and then some. If you stop at just doing what is expected of you or what you should do, that's not really a Christian response. Jesus said, if someone demands of you your coat, give him your cloak as well. Do what is required of you, what would be just, what would be fair, but go beyond that and do some more. Do and then some. And that phrase has stuck with me from college until now. One of the few things that's still stuck over time. Let that stick in your mind, that you want to behave like Micah and Zechariah are saying, do what's just and right, and then some. Show mercy, love compassion. And that will mark us out distinctly as Christian. And then finally here, kindness that goes around comes around. I wanted to suggest to you too, on the back of your bulletin with that last point, some of the actions of Hesed or Hesed, where they were doing acts of mercy and called upon God to help them to do these good deeds, these loving actions, or these actions of loving kindness. You have Eliezer of Damascus, Abraham's servant, who was hoping to find a wife for Yitzhak. Now this woman is Jewish, but would say Isaac, but Yitzhak, among strangers at a well. And she asked God to do Hesed with my employer, Abraham. Then you have Rahab, the harlot in Jericho, who endangers her life to shelter Joshua's spies. And she says, I did Hesed with you. Do Hesed with my family too when you come in to conquer the city. I've treated you in a lovingly kind way. I've shown you steadfast love. I've put myself at risk by hiding you as spies. Would you do the same kind of merciful treatment to me and to mine when you come into Jericho? David reaches out to the family of his rival, King Saul, saying, if anyone is still alive, I will do Hesed with him on behalf of my friendship with Jonathan. And David there in 2 Samuel 9 asked, is there anyone in the house of Saul that I could do kindness to? And someone said, well, there is Mephibosheth, and he's crippled. And David said to Mephibosheth, called him in. He thought, uh-oh, this is the next king cleaning house to make sure there's no threat to his throne. And David put his mind immediately at ease, and he said, from now on, you will eat at my table, because I entered into a covenant relationship with Jonathan. We were bound together like brothers in this covenant love, where we were faithful to each other and we trusted each other and we did good for each other. And he's gone now and Saul is gone, but you're part of the family and you will eat at the king's table for the rest of your life. Well, our king has invited us in because of his Hesed love to eat at his table and to be nourished there. Well, when we participate in acts of kindness, Hesed kind of love, and we send that around, it eventually comes back to us, doesn't it? The story of Ruth is a great story of this. When you look at chapter 1, Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go back, return each of you to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness, Hesed, as you have shown Hesed to your dead husbands and to me. She says, Ruth, Orpah, you've been kind to me and to the dead. My husband Elimelech and your husbands, who are now deceased after 10 years of marriage, you've been kind to them. May the Lord show the same kind of Hesed to you that you've shown. You've sent it around. It's time that I pray that it come back around to you. And then look at chapter 2, the next mention of Hesed in the book of Ruth. Beautiful little story. The Lord bless him, Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, talking about Boaz. She said, where did you work in the field, and where did you glean today, daughter-in-law? She says, well, it was this guy named Boaz. The Lord bless him. He has not stopped showing his kindness, his Hesed. To whom? To the living and the dead. What did chapter 1 say? May the Lord bless you, daughters-in-law, because you've never stopped showing Hesed to the living, me, Naomi, your mother-in-law, and to the dead, our husbands. And now here it's coming back around and you just happened to show up to glean in the field of a relative, he's our kinsman redeemer. That's the way the story goes on. He can get us out of financial trouble. And now he's showing you kindness, and he's showing our deceased mates kindness. I asked the Lord to show you that kindness, and now it's being shown through this man, Boaz. Wouldn't you love to be the instrument that God uses? Wouldn't you like to be one of the Boazes that shows the loving kindness of God to the living and to the dead? Sometimes people give gifts, what, in memory of, and they're showing kindness to the dead as well as to the living who appreciate that gift that is made in memoriam. He's showing kindness to the living and the dead. She added, that man is our close relative. He is the guardian redeemer, one of the guardian's redeemers, and he kind of quietly moves into first place. He's not first in line, but he wants to show kindness because he's heard about this woman, Ruth. He's seen how hard she works, and she's doing this all for her mother-in-law. She left home. She left her family. She left her religion. She left all of what she was brought up with so she could take care of her mother-in-law because she was in a covenant relationship with her mother-in-law. And now she is being blessed by our kinsman redeemer, and who's giving not only my daughter-in-law, but me, Ruth, new life. Or me, Naomi, new life. And then we have another reference in Ruth chapter 3. The Lord bless you, my daughter, Boaz says to Ruth. This kindness that she is showing now, where she's just proposed. And ladies, if you think it's appropriate to pop the question to the guy, Ruth's your woman. She did an action where she said, would you spread your garment over me? Which was, would you be my kinsman redeemer? And Boaz is impressed. He says, this kindness, asking me to marry you, is greater than that which you showed earlier. You've not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. You could have thought of yourself, Ruth, and your future, and you could have gone after one of those young guys that has more mileage left on him, who has more strength. But you've decided to look out for your mother-in-law. I mean, come on, people. When you look out after your mother-in-law, that is really loving kindness. That's stretching it. You say, well, I want to show kindness to everyone except mother-in-law. You know, I even heard one of those ringtones one time. And there was wild music, and it says, don't answer the phone. It's your mother-in-law. Don't answer the phone. Ruth answered the phone. She wanted to show loving kindness, steadfast love to her mother-in-law. And Boaz says, I'm impressed. You went for the old guy because you were thinking of your mother-in-law. Steadfast love. That goes against our nature. We generally look out for ourselves first. And then if there's anything left over, we'll share it with somebody else. Ruth is a marvelous example here of getting back what she was already sharing. She had already shown loving kindness to her mother-in-law by coming back to Bethlehem, the house of bread, during a famine where there was no bread in the house. Showing kindness there. And now she just happens to bump into a financial future. It goes around, and it came around for Ruth. Jesus said, do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. He said on another occasion, blessed are the merciful, for what? They shall receive mercy. If you send it around, it'll come back. If you treat people mercifully, they'll generally treat you mercifully, and certainly God will treat you mercifully. But if you treat them only justly and according to a strict system of justice and you hold them strictly accountable, then that's the way God will hold you, as our passages are going to show here. I don't know about you, but the first thing I want when I see God face to face is mercy. Yes, I want to do justice, and I want a just God and a just judge to judge me, but I want everything He judges me by to be tempered with mercy, and let mercy have the last word. Okay? Jesus said it this way: do to others as you would like them do to you. If you love only those who love you, if you are faithfully loving others or showing kindness to others because they're kind to you, why should you get credit for that? Jesus says, big deal. Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good only to those who do good to you, why should you get credit? Even sinners do that much. You think, I'm proud of myself. I did something nice to so-and-so, but you know, he's a good guy and he deserves it. Jesus says, try somebody that you don't like and do good to them. That's what steadfast love is all about. If you lend money only to those who can repay you, and we'd add here with a little interest, why should you get credit? Even sinners will lend to other sinners for a full return. Love your enemies. Do good to them. Show them steadfast love. If he's your enemy, make him your friend by showing faithful love. Lend to them without expecting to be repaid. Now that's the kicker in this whole thing. Every time we do something good to someone, we kind of pause there and say, okay, your turn. You know, isn't that the way marriage kind of goes? You know, I did something nice for you, fixed breakfast. Your turn. Remember when I went to the store the other day and did all the shopping and so, you know, it's about your turn, isn't it? We keep records and we expect something in return. But you know, when we do something and no one seems to notice what I'm doing around here, and no one even bothers to say thank you, well, I'm shutting it down. I don't work for ingrates. Then we haven't got the message yet, have we? Steadfast love. When you do good, you do it because it's the right thing to do, it's the good thing to do, and you don't expect what? Anything. Now, when you get there, you let me know. I'm working on it. You know, I may drop a few hints. You can't be too direct, you know, like it's your turn. You have to just kind of subtly lay something out there and say, well, you know, I did. And then hope they catch a hint. But you know, some people are so dense you have to use the blunt instrument. Your turn. He says, don't expect anything to be repaid. And then your reward from heaven will be very great. See, there's the plus to this. If you're looking for a reward now, you'll probably get it one way or another. But that's all you're going to get. If you give without expecting anything in return, God will reward you. And I'll guarantee you it's going to be better than what that irresponsible spouse or neighbor of yours could ever think of giving you. You'll be repaid richly. And you'll be truly acting as children of the Most High. You'll be taking on His nature. For He is kind to those who are unthankful and wicked. How many of His children got up this morning to a beautiful morning, enjoyed a beautiful rain, and said, thank you, Father? And He said, well, the majority didn't say thank you, so that's it. Back to the drought. No. His love is forever. And we want to be like Him. You must be compassionate just as your Father is compassionate or merciful. Do not judge others, you'll not be judged. What goes around comes around. Do not condemn others, or it will come back against you. Forgive others, and what? You'll be forgiven. If you send it around, it'll come back. Don't expect it, but it will. Give, and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured out into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. I used to preach this, when I was doing a sermon on taking up an offering. And I've heard any number of preachers use this passage. Give and it'll be given to you. Pressed down, shaken together, running over. Now we're going to pass the baskets and give, and it'll be given back to you. What's he talking about giving here? He's saying give forgiveness. That's his point. He's not talking about giving money. He just ruined the sermon. That's good grief. But what he's saying here is much more valuable than what we can put into the offering basket. If you give forgiveness, you'll get it back. It'll be pressed down. It'll be running over. I want his forgiveness to just slop out on me on that final day. Because of all the things I've done wrong, I did one thing that was right, and I showed mercy. I showed his loyal, forgiving love. James put it this way, and we'll end with him. So whatever you say or whatever you do, remember that you will be judged by the law that sets you free. He's saying we're not under law, we're under the law of grace, the law that sets us free. We have been graciously set free from a strict, just standard of law, and we're judged by the mercy of God. We do justice, we love mercy, and we're humble about it, knowing that we're not that good to deserve it. Whatever you do or say, remember you'll be judged by the law that sets you free. There will be no mercy for those who have not shown mercy to others. But if you have been merciful, God will be merciful when he judges you. That's the final word. And as James puts it, mercy triumphs over justice or over judgment. That story came together. Mercy and justice embraced and kissed at the cross. The justice of God says sin is serious. It separates you from me, and there has to be a penalty for sin, and the wages of sin are death. It's never changed. But mercy came in at the cross and triumphed over justice. What does God want us to do, to be? To love justice, but let mercy have the last word. Hesed. It's a beautiful word. When we embrace it, it's a beautiful life. If you need to respond, would you do so while we sing?